And so when it came time around to do the quiet arrangement, I was going to ask him for money. And I was on a job with him. We were in California, and I said to him, so I wrote this movie, this feature film, and, Kyle was going to be in it. He's like, yeah? And I'm like, yeah. And I was about to say, you got some money, you can, can I get like a little bit of money? And he goes, you can roll for me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, yeah, sure, man, I'll get you the script. And I'm like, who the fuck is he going to play? And I'm like, okay. And so I'm looking through the scripts, and the police chief had like a slightly bigger role, but it was still small. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to rewrite the scene. I'm going to condense it, and that's who Chuck's going to be. He'll be the police chief. And he was doing a lecture in Kentucky, and he was going to go home to New York. And so he just changed his flight. He came to Pittsburgh. I picked him up from the airport. I got the other actors. We went and we did the scene in literally like 2 hours or something like that. It might have been even less than that. Knocked it out. He was incredibly professional. He knew his lines. And it was great. And then I took him back to the airport, and he flew to New York. And consequently, I ended up driving to New York because I was doing a job that weekend. So, he beat me to the front. He beat me there, but I ended up seeing him later on that night. He goes, how'd it go? How's the footage? And I'm like, it's great. And you were great. Thanks for doing that. And so he came to the premiere when we did the premiere. And so he's just a phone call away now. It's just, if I'm doing a film, I'm like, if I need a song or if I need him to make a cameo, I just give him a call. I was like, can you do this? He's like, yeah, let me figure it out. It's nice having a guy like that be on your short list of favors that you can call in. I realize that I'm very lucky that I have that card in my pocket.
So you pretty much answered my next question. So, yeah, my next question was that Kyle Jason is quite the talented actor. How'd you get involved with him? So he was a musician on Chuck D's label?
Yeah, Kyle, oh man, he has had such an interesting life. The amount of talent that he has, he's had the worst luck. In the early 90s, he was signed to Virgin Records, okay? And he was, at the time, they gave him the biggest advance they had ever given an R&B artist at that time. And they were setting him up to be the next big thing. I mean, they were all in on him. He recorded an album. He was, did some shows, and he was they were getting ready to do it. And then Virgin signed Janet Jackson, their label, and they dropped everybody else to be able to afford Janet Jackson. Kyle was saddled with no album coming out. He didn't own his masters. He had to pay back this crazy advance. He had bought his mom a house. He goes, one week I'm like, the toast of the town for these guys. The next week I'm working at a fish market. He goes, it was unbelievable. So in the mid-90s, Chuck started his label Slam Jams through Sony Records. And they did 2 releases before they had problems with Sony and had to kind of drop out. But Kyle's release was one of those releases. And it's a great little record. Again, but though it was thwarted by Sony, didn't want to put any marketing behind it. So he's got this album out there. It's a cool little record. It's just kind of this obscure thing. Some people know about it, some people don't. And I had heard the record just because I knew that it was Chuck's label. So I bought the record. And I enjoyed it. And when I finally got to meet him, I was like, dude, you do great stuff. He's like, thanks, man. He goes, I didn't even realize you knew about it. We did some videos together. And then he said to me one time, I was up in New York working on something. He goes, yeah, so I did this movie. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What movie? And he goes, yeah, I did this movie for this guy, Dooney Smith. Okay. I'm like, I didn't even know this. I didn't know you acted. He goes, yeah, I'm trying to do it. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, where can I see it? He goes, well, it's coming out. It'll be out on video. And he told me what it was. And consequently, Dooney Smith was an actor. He was a character actor. And he did a lot of stuff. He was in Lethal Weapon 2. He's one of the cops in Lethal Weapon 2 that gets killed or whatever. But, he had knocked around Hollywood for a while, and then he just got in and he wanted to do his own films. So he was doing these 16-millimeter, no-budget movies, one-take movies, action crime dramas or whatever, but he was doing it on his own terms. And he said, I'm going to do 10 films in 10 years. And he ended up doing 10 films in 6 years or 12 films in 6 years.
Wow.
And it was crazy. And so, when I first got Netflix, I started looking up these movies. And so I got the movie that Kyle told me about, because he did a couple for Junior. And, oh, man, it was not good. Kyle was great, but, like, the movie was just not good. It was just, and I called Kyle, I'm like, you guys only had one take to do, like, each shot, right? And he goes, oh, yeah, man. He goes, unless something went really, really bad, did we have, like, get another take? I was like, yeah, it kind of looks like it. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I was kind of disappointed. I said, but you're good, and you've got something going on. He's like, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So, I was on another trip up to New York. He was living there at the time. And I hadn't written a quiet arrangement yet, but I figured it out. I had all situated in my mind. And so I said, hey, Kyle, come here. And like, what's up, man? I said, you got like 15 minutes? I got to tell you the story. He's like, yeah, sure. So he sat down, and I told him the story. I laid out the whole movie to him. And he goes, that's incredible. What are you thinking? And I said, I want you to play the Rick character. I want you to play Rick Field, the kidnapper. He goes, I am in, man. Whenever you want to do it, you let me know. And I said, okay. I said, I got to write it. I've got to figure it out. I got to write it. And he goes, okay, just let me know. And so he kept pestering me every once in a while. He's like, what's up with the movie, man? I said, I'm still working on it. And because the way the film is structured, it was pretty complicated. And so it took me like 6 or 7 drafts to kind of feel like I had it all laid out correctly. So finally I sent him the script, and he's like, yeah. He goes, I cannot wait to do this. I said, I gotta figure out how we're going to pay for it. Because I had to get him out to Pittsburgh to shoot it. And just, we had to rent cars and things like that. And, it wasn't going to cost a whole lot, but I had to figure out how that was going to happen. And so my cousin John came out, and, I showed him one of Junie's movies or part of it. And I said, look, man, we can do this. And I only need a little bit of money. I said, do you think you can come up with this? And he's like, yeah, I'll get it figured out. And so that's how that all started. So we brought Kyle out for a couple days at a time. We brought him out twice. We knocked out all his stuff, and that was the beginning of the filmmaking relationship with him. And he's great, man. He's my brother from another mother. We have on Dark of Winter, we have a shorthand now. He knows if you do this or whatever. He's like, yo, you want me to? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, I got you. I don't even have to really say it. He's like, let's do this. And he's like, okay, yeah, I know it. And he's got it, So yeah, so Kyle's great to work with. I kind of missed him on Swing Lowe. Swing Lowe was the first feature I did that I didn't have him. He was off doing other stuff. And so that was kind of weird at first. I'm like, showing up the first day, I'm like, oh, I don't have Kyle on set. But yeah, man, I love working with the guy. He's such an immensely talented guy.
I understand there's been some changes to Dark of Winter since I posted my review about it. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've changed?
Yeah, I want to thank you for that. You were instrumental in figuring out why I didn't like the end of my movie.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, subtle thing. It was just a little bit, and I actually have to change something else too. I want to reshoot something because we did a screening of it recently, and as soon as that scene came up, I was like, damn it. I was like, it's just not right. And it's not so much what the actors did. It was a technical thing that I did on set the day of because we were in a hurry and I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. And I just totally blew it. And when I got into editing, I was like, what the hell did you do? And so I finally convinced the actors. I'm like, look, can we take an hour and go out and reshoot this because, it'll make me feel better because it won't look so shitty, when that scene comes up. And they're like, yeah, if you want to do it, Dave, we'll go do it. My one actor, Matt, he was like, dude, I thought it looked fine. I'm like, no, Matt, it doesn't look fine. Every time I see it, I hate it. But the thing I changed was in the 11th hour before the premiere, we were trying to infer something. There's a bit at the end, and we were trying to infer that the everything was happening as part of a larger kind of purpose. there was a larger hand at work. Unfortunately, our original idea, which we thought was cool at the time, was too specific. And you had mentioned it in your review about something about the CIA and all that stuff. And I realized that we had made a big mistake there, and it shouldn't be that concrete. So we took that out. Now, it's more in line with kind of like some of the other imagery that we had going on the film. Fire as a drastic changing agent, and burning things, and water, and so now it's like it's kind of hinted at. It's just not as direct as that was with the computer screen and all that crap. So all that's out of there. It's more organic, and that's what it needed. And every time I had watched the movie after we premiered it, like when we got to that part, it wasn't sitting right with me, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I read your review, and you're like, some of this stuff doesn't work, and like CIA, really? And I was like, oh shit, that's what it is. That's the problem. I'm like, yeah, it's not sitting well with me either. It's bothering me. So yeah, thanks, man, Ryan. I should give you a screenwriting credit.
So your next movie, Swing Lowe Sweet Chariote, seems to be kind of a coming-of-age type of film set in the mean streets of Cleveland. Is the crime aspect, is that something you see all your films having? I mean, do you think you're ever going to do a buddy comedy or a gory horror movie or something completely different that doesn't have that crime aspect to it?
Oh man, you know what? Let me tell you about Dark of Winter, the origins of Dark of Winter, right? Dark of Winter started as I wanted to do a European art film. That's where that started. So, and then I'm trying to write this, and guns come into it, and people get shot, and I'm like, damn it, So, it's funny too because I'm a pacifist. A terrible story. Last year I got robbed at gunpoint. It was actually shortly before we did Dark of Winter. I got robbed at gunpoint. First time, hopefully the last time in my life. That was interesting to me. One, the way that I reacted to it, because I'd always kind of wondered, in the back of my mind, how I would react to a situation like that. And I reacted different than I thought I would. And I started to realize that I think the reason that I put that stuff in my movies is kind of me working out issues that I have, I guess. Because I'm not a violent person. And when it comes to a real life situation like that, it's not cool. It's not cool at all. So I think that's why it always ends up in the movies. And I'll tell you, since that experience, even with Swing Lowe, some of the violence in it, I've been a little conflicted. I would write it and I would be fine with the script, and then we would shoot it, and I would be like, okay, because you're going through the process. But then I'd put the scenes together in editing, and I'd look at it and I'd be like, wow, this is, because there's some bits in Swing Lowe that are pretty violent, and I'm just like, and I felt weird about it, just thinking back on, what happened to me, and I was fine. I came out of that incident unscathed. The guy just took the money and left. It was that kind of situation. So nothing happened, but it got me thinking about things. Would I do a bloody, gory horror film? Maybe if it was like real tongue in cheek. Like I love Evil Dead 2. I like Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead 2. I really love Army of Darkness. So if it was something like Evil Dead 2, I can see that. It would have to be something like that.
So the crime aspect, that's not a requirement necessarily for one of your films.
No, but it always draws me back. It really does. Yeah, I'd love to do, my brothers and I always made, really goofy comedy, dark comedy, It would always end up, somebody gets shot in them or stupid like that. But yeah, we do that stuff. Comedy is tough, though. That's the thing about comedy. Everybody thinks that, everybody would think, well, really dramatic stuff is tough. And it can be. You have to have the right balance. And you've got to have really good actors or whatever. But comedy is really fucking tough, man. People think that it's easy to be funny. It's not easy to be funny. It isn't. And, but, some of the stuff we've done, we've gotten laughs out of it. People like some of the black humor that's in our films, the really dark humor. So, So yeah, I'd love to do that kind of stuff, and I still want to make a European art film. I probably shouldn't write it. I should probably get somebody else to write it,
or just go shoot something and edit it together.
Yeah, right. And just like make a promise to myself that don't put a gun in it.
So after Swing Lowe, what's next?
That depends on Swing Lowe. If Swing Lowe does really well, we've got to do a sequel because it only just makes sense.
Is there another book following it?
Yeah, it's not written yet, and that's the one problem because the first book is open-ended, and so we took a chance with the film and shot it open-ended. The original ending we had didn't quite work, and so I had to kind of, reshape it a bit to give it some closure, but still leave it open. So if Swing Lowe does well, and it might, it's looking that it might really take off, then it only makes sense for us to jump into the next film. The problem with that is that since Stella is still writing the book, I'm going to have to work off her notes and work off an outline. But in a way, I'm not really that nervous about it because in adapting the first book, the movie has kind of become its own thing. It has some things that are like very close to the book, but in terms of structure, I had to alter that a lot so that it would work in the context of being a film. So I know that I can do that the second time around, and we contractually we're able to do that. We're allowed to make whatever changes we fit. And she's cool with it too. We had a first public showing at a film festival in Cleveland a couple weeks ago, and Stella finally got to see it, and she was really thrilled with it. I was afraid she was going to be mad that I changed a lot of stuff because I had to. I had to change and condense things, but I tried to stay as close to the tone and spirit of her story as I could. And she was just like, at one point, I thought she was going to cry. She was like so excited. I was like, oh, okay, all right, I did okay then. So yeah, that's next. If Swing Lowe, for whatever reason doesn't work, then I'm not sure. It's still kind of open. I know we want to look for more authors and try to kind of adapt more projects. From a marketing standpoint, at this stage of the game, it's a matter of trying to piggyback off as many different things as you possibly can, because we don't have a lot of marketing dollars. That's what it comes down to. I mean, that's the grim reality, and I guess that's another con of working in the no budget area. You want people to see your film, but you need a hook. You got to get them into the theater. So, was Swing Lowe Sweet Chariote the film that I wanted to make at that point in time? Maybe not entirely, but I did find a way to kind of make it my own, and make it a David T. Snyder movie, So yeah, it is. It fits in with what I've done, I think, in its own way. Going into it, I was nervous about that because I was like, it's about a teenage, a young African American teenage girl. What the hell do I know about that? Nothing about it. And so that's where the book came in. And luckily my actors were so good in the film, they were able to bring so much to it that I didn't have to worry about it, And another reason why casting is such an important part of the filmmaking process. A lot of people overlook.
And if it doesn't work, you can just get a 16mm camera and go to the shores of Denmark and start shooting something. So
yeah, exactly. And I'm cool with that.